Hey folks, how's it going? My name is Mark Medeiros, Senior Community Engagement Manager at Peninsula Open Space Trust, and really excited to be here with you tonight for our webinar on the plants and animals of Bay Area Oak Woodlands. Before we begin, I want to mention and acknowledge that the lands in post-working area have been home to communities of Native people since time immemorial. This is the ancestral territory of the Amamutsun, the Moekmo Ohlone, the Ramaytush Ohlone, and many more individuals who spoke the many languages and are ancestors of the many tribes of the Bay Area. So wherever you are, please pause to acknowledge the Native people whose land you are on. Think about what role you could play in supporting these Native people directly, wherever you are. And for any Native community members, thank you for joining us. So next, I would like to mention a little bit about Post and what we do. We are a 501c3 nonprofit land trust operating in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties, a little bit of northern Santa Cruz County. We've protected over 80,000 acres to date in this area. And this is, of course, thanks to a large community of donors in our area who make this work possible, have been making this work possible since we were founded in 1977. We know many of you are watching tonight, so we want to say thank you. And we appreciate you very much. So today we're going to be talking about these trees, the oaks that make up such a large part of our local ecosystems. And in particular, we're going to be talking about oak woodlands. So we have those on both sides of the Santa Clara Valley, on the peninsula and the East Bay. They're throughout California, a beautiful, diverse ecosystem. And we're just going to go deep on that ecosystem type tonight. And we have a wonderful, wonderful person who's going to be telling us all about the Oak Woodlands. It's Oak Woodlands expert named Kate Marianchild. I know many of you are familiar with her. She is an author, naturalist, and guide, and author of The Secrets of the Oak Woodlands. So upon her move to inland Mendocino in 2001, Kate fell passionately in love with the oak woodland ecosystem. She found herself wondering about the ecosystem species and what they need for survival. Following her curiosity, Kate approached Heyday Books with a book idea and began 5 years of intense research and writing, which evolved into her book. Kate currently leads walks, teaches classes, and speaks up on behalf of Oak Woodlands. And we are so happy to be here with her tonight. So let me welcome Kate. Hey, Kate.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. It's been wonderful working with you, getting ready for this presentation.
I appreciate you and all of your work so much. And I know everybody is happy to be hearing from you tonight. So where are you calling us from? Where are you right now?
I'm in just outside of Ukiah, the northwest edge of Ukiah, about a mile off of a paved road in an oak woodland with, I think, 6 different species of oaks. So it's no accident that my book arrived from this place.
Wow. Yeah, so I know Mendocino and that whole area, it's such a utopia of nature, and especially oak woodlands.
Yeah, I have concluded that Mendocino County has the largest expanses of relatively pristine oak woodlands in the state of California. I didn't know it when I wrote my book, and then I figured it out after I started traveling all over the state to give talks and lead walks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's worth a trip. It's been a while since I've gotten up there, but I encourage you in the audience to plan a trip over there sometime. But we have some really nice oak woodlands right here near at home too. So, and we'll be talking about those. So Kate, thank you. And you have a lot to cover. So let me pass it over to you. If you could get yeah, I'll let you know when your slides are ready for folks to see.
Okay.
All right, there you go, Kate. So take it away.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And I want to thank Post also. And I also want to acknowledge that I live on the ancestral lands of the Pomo people. And it's not just ancestral, there are lots of Pomo people here today and very active and trying to work on local issues and recover their lands. So hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here tonight to celebrate with you some of the marvels of Bay Area oak woodlands. And before I start, I just want to say that you'll see watercolors in my slideshow that are also in my book, and they were done by a wonderful local artist named Anne McGlinty. And I'd like to thank the photographers whose photos I have used. When I'm in the final countdown preparing for a PowerPoint presentation, I sometimes grab photos off the internet and don't remember to get the name of the photographer. So if you see one of your photographs in my presentation tonight and it's uncredited, please let me know. So for years, I have known that oak woodlands are support more diversity than any other ecosystems type land-based ecosystem in California. But what I didn't know for sure until recently is that oaks themselves support more life forms than any other plant in North America. And it wasn't until I read a wonderful book by Doug Tallamy called, hold on, oh, just a minute. My slide advancing has to be there. Called The Nature of Oaks, the Rich Ecology of Our Most Essential Trees, that I learned how oaks managed to achieve their status as the most essential plants. But I'm going to leave that hypothesis, which is really fascinating, till the end of this program. So I've given a lot of talks on oaks now, how to identify them, their marvelous survival strategies, and deep glimpses into the lives of some of the species that depend on them, like the iconic acorn woodpecker that is just endlessly interesting, and new research is providing new insights into them every day. But tonight I'm going to take a different approach and focus not as much on oaks as the trees and shrubs that live in community with them. And almost all of them communicate with and support each other through underground networks of mycorrhizal fungi. The fungi connect with the roots of the trees and the shrubs, and they extract nutrients from soil and rock and deliver them to the plants that need them most, increasing the plant's nutrient uptake by a factor of 100 times more than what their roots alone could supply them with. And the fungi manage ecosystems for maximum health and diversity. These are oak chanterelles, also known as California chanterelles, the fruiting bodies of one of the dozens of species of mycorrhizal fungi that partner with oaks and connect them to other plants. So most life on Earth, including us, wouldn't exist without this fungus-plant partnership, which is the most widespread and important symbiosis on Earth. About 22 species of oaks exist in California, and 11 of them occur naturally in the Bay Area. These are the tree-sized oaks: coast live, interior live, black oak, coast live oak, valley oak, blue oak, Oregon white, and do I have valley twice? No, and what's the other one down there? Canyon live oak. And these are the scrub oaks that occur in the Bay Area. They're just smaller scrub or shrub oaks. And these smaller oaks are taking on a new significance now that we have to turn our towns and cities into wildlife corridors and caterpillar paradises. And oaks are the single best plants for that. But tree oaks are often too large for city gardens, and scrub oaks are often more appropriate. So consider that. And these scrub oaks, some of them support hundreds of caterpillar species. And you'll hear more soon about caterpillars. And here is a tan oak, which is not a true oak, but it's a close relative of oaks. And that also occurs on the west side of the bay. And by the way, oaks and tan oaks are the only plants in North America that produce acorns. And acorns are nuts that are nestled in little caps. And if you're trying to figure out if a tree is an oak or not, look for acorns and or the little caps. So I'm going to leave oaks for a while now and move to other plants that are in community with oaks, starting with California buckeye, beloved of many people. This tree is endemic or native only to California. And all parts of this plant, including its nectar and pollen, are extremely toxic. But when I took this photo one June, the flowers were swarming with insects, beetles and flies and native bees and butterflies. And in fact, the buckeye's flowers may attract more butterflies than any other plant in California. And how can that be, since the nectar and pollen is toxic? Well, it's because native butterflies and other native insects have had millennia in which to evolve resistance to buckeye's toxins, the toxins with which the tree protects itself or tries to protect itself against herbivores, against any plant eaters. And honeybees, on the other hand, are not native, and when they visit buckeye flowers, the results are disastrous. So, but while lots of butterflies can tolerate buckeye toxins, adult butterflies, buckeye is host to only about 11 caterpillar species. And a host plant is one that moth and butterfly caterpillars feed on. And it's harder for caterpillars to evolve resistance because they have to eat so much food from the same plant, the same individual plant, in a very short time. They have to grow by a factor of thousands. I've actually heard the figure of 20,000 in the course of a few weeks. So they get much more exposure to the toxins than the insects do that can move around and don't have to eat so much. So have you ever seen this butterfly? This is the echo blue, and it's the one butterfly, as opposed to the 10 other moths, that uses buckeye as a host plant. But instead of eating these soft, yummy looking leaves of buckeye, which is what most caterpillars do, I think, most eat leaves, the echo blue caterpillar consumes the buds and flowers of buckeye. And can you see the caterpillar here? It's this big lump, pretty well camouflaged, huh? I'm going to tell you some really, really cool stuff about this caterpillar later on. And it'll be a different color too. And check out the buckeye seed. These are the largest seeds produced by any California native plant. And wouldn't you think that every plant-eating mammal would covet them for their fats and proteins and carbs? But there are actually only two mammals that can survive eating buckeye seeds, and those are western gray squirrels and California ground squirrels. And amazingly, these squirrels have not only evolved immunity to buckeye toxins, they have also evolved immunity or resistance to rattlesnake venom. An adult ground squirrel, whoops, I'm on the wrong slide. Whoops, okay. Sorry about that. An adult ground squirrel can survive a bite that would kill a human. And if you look in the lower left-hand corner, you can see a rattlesnake there, and it's sort of coiled up next to a ground squirrel burrow. And ground squirrels have also evolved several behaviors to protect their babies from rattlesnakes, because the babies are not immune. And one is that the adults chew the shed skins of rattlesnakes, and then using their tongues and paws, they spread rattlesnake flavored perfume in the form of saliva all over their babies. And that is proven to deter rattlesnakes. And when a rattlesnake is nearby, they flood their tails with extra blood and wave them back and forth. And they do that, they wave their tails for anybody, but they only flood them with blood for rattlesnakes. Well, what good does that do? Well, rattlesnakes have heat sensing organs on the front of their snouts. And let's see, I'm having a little trouble here. Let's see. What happened? There. So they have these heat sensing organs on the front of their snouts. And when the ground squirrel waves its tail that's filled with blood, it makes the ground squirrel seem like a larger animal, and it often causes the snake to slither away. And no other animal besides ground squirrels have the ability to do this. Okay, so that was a digression from buckeye, and now I'm going to move on to Pacific madrone. This ancient beauty lives in British Columbia. So you probably know this tree by its incredibly smooth reddish trunk and branches, and its white blossoms and its large reddish berries. And does anyone eat those berries? Well, I'm glad you asked. Yes, many fruit-eating birds such as berried thrush in the upper left, American robin on the right, northern flicker on the bottom, and band-tailed pigeon eat the berries along with various other birds. And then the berries are also popular with rodents like wood rats and mice, as well as raccoons and deer and bears. Here's proof. You can tell these aren't Manzanita berries by the sort of grainy appearance of the skin of the berry. And so who eats madrone leaves? Well, deer do, but only the young leaves, which have fewer protective chemicals. And about 22 caterpillar species also eat them. There's one butterfly and about 21 moths, including the beautiful Ceanothus silk moth caterpillar. And I'm going to give a little lesson in butterfly metamorphosis now, because I have found that a lot of well-educated adults think that metamorphosis just means that a caterpillar grows wings, and the caterpillar's head and thorax and abdomen become the center of the butterfly. So as caterpillars eat, they get too big for their skins and they have to shed them, and they do some transforming in the process. So each new molt or instar looks different from the last. This is the caterpillar that emerged after the third molt, and it's referred to as the third instar. Isn't it wild looking? And it will look different from this after its fourth molt, and different still after its fifth molt. And this is how it looks after its fifth molt. Not quite so pretty, but by now it's getting to be 4 or 5 inches long. And this caterpillar will crawl off somewhere that's hopefully safe, and it will start spinning a double cocoon around itself, starting like this one on the left. And if you notice in the one in the center, you can still see the green caterpillar in here. And then it keeps getting built until it looks like the one on the right, which is sort of slightly hard. And it ends up then like this, with a cocoon, a fuzzy cocoon on the inside and a hard cocoon on the outside. And once the caterpillar is safe inside its double cocoon, it dissolves inside its skin into a nutrient soup and reforms into a pupa. So this is what is inside the cocoon, the inner cocoon. And once the caterpillar, so that's, so the pupa retains the nervous system and the breathing tubes of the caterpillar, as well as these things called imaginal discs that are kind of, I imagine them being somewhat like stem cells. And there's one for each body part. So they have to arrange themselves in the right positions. The wings, the imaginal disc for the wing, each leg, or all the legs, the eyes, the antennae, etc. And then they start to grow and multiply. And eventually what will emerge is this beautiful Ceanothus silk moth that has a 3 to 5 inch wingspan. And I started to say I'm going to talk about caterpillars and other insects quite a lot tonight because they're the foundation of animal food chains and their populations are in rapid decline. And caterpillars specifically are essential, irreplaceable food for most baby land birds. So another moth, this time a tiny one, is an artist. It makes these beautiful designs on madrone leaves. So its caterpillar feeds just below the upper layer of the leaf. And you can see that in some places the lines are skinnier than others. They get fatter as the caterpillar eats and gets bigger. And I wish you were a live audience so I could see a show of hands on how many of you have admired these leaves before. So now I'm going to move on to California laurel, also known as California bay laurel, also known as pepperwood or Oregon myrtle or headache tree, or one of 12 other names. And at the top center, you can see the fruit and nut of the bay tree. These nuts are called bay nuts or pepper nuts. And they're a huge part of the diet of Steller's jays over here on the left and western gray squirrels on the left. And they're the primary food, apparently year-round, of the California mouse at the bottom left. And they're also eaten by scrub jays and crows and wood rats and humans. In my book, I mention the ways in which the Ohlone and Pomo peoples use the nuts and the fruits. And as for me, let's say that the fruits are an acquired taste. And wood rats use not only the nuts, but also the leaves of buckeye. But they don't eat the leaves. They nibble the leaves around their edges and then distribute them around their sleeping chambers. And that is to release the powerful volatile oils in bay that has been shown in laboratory experiments to kill 70% of flea larvae. And those leaves here, those are oak leaves. This wood rat likes to snack on live oak leaves in bed. And then after they disperse these bay leaves around their nest, they remove the spent ones after 3 days and they go out and collect fresh ones. And in my wood rat chapter, I say much more about these adorable animals who are talented architects and herbalists and chemists and landscapers. And I don't have time to say much, although I will say a little bit more at the end. So who else utilizes bay leaves? Deer browse on the young leaves, and only 3 caterpillar species are thought to eat them. And one of those caught my eye. It's the western avocado leaf roller moth. Well, what do avocados have to do with moths? Well, millions of years ago, not long after the dinosaurs were wiped out, which was 65.5 million years ago, the northern hemisphere had a tropical and semi-tropical climate and ecosystems that stretched all the way to the North Pole. And during that time, there were 8 members of the laurel family that lived in this land that we now know as California. And 3 or 4 of them were avocados. And of those 8 members of the laurel family and the several avocados, only one survived the transition to a much drier climate, and that is the California bay laurel, which of course isn't an avocado, but doesn't that look a lot like an avocado? And here you can see what the inner flesh looks like, which what the flesh looks like, which is a lot like avocados, just not as much of it, but it's definitely an acquired taste. Okay, now I'm going to move into shrubs that associate with oaks, such as Toyon. Can you find Toyon in this photograph? I'll give you a hint. It's in the lower right and pretty much across the foreground. And if you don't recognize it in this photo, you might recognize it in this photo. And we'll get to the berries in a minute, but let's start with the flowers. And while I'm talking, see if you can find any insects among these flowers. So Toyon is in the rose family, and its flowers are very attractive to insects. And guess what its primary pollinators are? Flies. And you probably don't know this, but flies are second only to bees as the world's primary pollinators. And they've gotten a bad name because of our house flies, but they're actually, there's nothing yucky or icky about flies at all. They're a lot like bees. In the case of Toyon, the fly pollinators are a kind of fly called hoverflies, which is what we have here in the upper left where the red arrow is. And on the right, upper right, we have a honeybee, and on the lower one, I'm not sure what that is. And here's a closer look at the honeybee. And this is one of 27 bee species that visit Toyon, and of course the other 26 are native bees. And a lot of people aren't even aware of the existence of native bees, and they're really cool to look at and with close focus binoculars, which I'm going to talk about a little later, as are hoverflies and all native flies. So here are 2 ornate checkered beetles who come to Toyon for pollen, but right now have something else on their minds. And they have a fascinating lifestyle. The female lays her egg, this female will lay her eggs on the underside of this flower head. And then after the egg hatches, the larva that emerges will attach itself to the leg of a visiting bee or wasp and hitch a ride to its nest, where it will seek out the bee or wasp larva and parasitize it, which means eat it. I don't know if it does it right away or what. And another thing I love looking for on flowers is crab spiders. These are often well camouflaged, and they often hide out in ambush on the underside of a flower and then dart up to grab an insect. And here, this one has caught some kind of fly. And I love to bring up spiders in my talks because after insects, they are the most important prey for birds. And they're also the source of the silk that anchors and holds together and is kind of the glue for many, if not most, songbird nests. And of course, so this is another reason for us to work at restoring insects, because spiders depend on insects, and birds and a lot of other kinds of animals depend on spiders. So Toyon berries start turning from green to yellow around the autumn equinox in September. But you won't see birds eating them then, even after the berries have started to turn rosy. And that's because the berry's pulp is full of cyanide compounds, and the birds can tell. But when the berries finally turn bright red, their brilliant color is a come and get it signal to the birds. And it means that the cyanide compounds have retreated into the seed, making the pulp safe to eat. And the seeds pass right through the bird's digestive tracts and get dispersed that way. So that's, there's a bit of a symbiosis there. And this is a cedar waxwing, a beautiful bird in the upper left, and a robin in the right, and a house finch in the lower left, all eating toyon berries. And they're also scarfed down by a number of mammals, including wood rats and gray foxes and bears and badgers. Whoops, I didn't mean badgers. Coyotes and coyotes. And so the berries are an important part of coyote diets in winter. And by the way, most people don't know this, but insects are a major part of coyote diets in summer. And one of the mammals that coyotes rely on heavily when ever they're around is the California ground squirrel. But coyotes really, really, really prefer to hunt ground squirrels in partnership with badgers. And McGlinty painted this watercolor for my book from an actual photograph. That's how they were hanging out together. And I described this partnership in my book, but at that time, everyone thought that the coyote was taking advantage of the badger, and it wasn't really an equal partnership. But I recently learned something new. Notice how alert the coyote is and erect, while the badger appears to be almost falling asleep and looking off, daydreaming. Well, researchers found that when badgers hunt alone, they prop their head and body up so they can do long-range scanning. But when they are with coyotes, they relax. So that might be one of the things that badgers get out of this partnership. And of course, what coyotes get out of, one of the things they get out is the big badger paws that are designed for digging. So in case you're not familiar with how this works, when there aren't any ground squirrels around for either of them to nab, the badgers dig for them. And the squirrels then often pop up through their escape tunnels that are hidden by just a thin layer of dirt. And a waiting coyote will then grab one. But if the ground squirrel sees the coyote in time, it might go back down into the burrow, but it might go back down into the badger's jaws. Here are some photos of, whoops, that's went too far. Okay, of these animals together. In the upper photos, I suspect the coyotes have come to recruit the badgers for a hunt. Although in the left photo, they just look like they're hanging out. And in the lower ones, they're traveling to their hunting grounds. And I'm sure many, many of you have watched the video that went viral of a coyote badger interaction that happened in the Santa Cruz Mountains. This coyote is in the let's play position, and he or she is facing a badger that's coming along. And here is the badger showing up. And this happened, I think it was in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and it might have even been a post trail cam. I'm not sure about that. It's easy to find this video on YouTube. It's all over the place. And but from looking at photos and videos, I think these two animals really seem to have an old shoe comfort with each other, and you know, maybe kind of a family feeling and friendship. And I don't think this is strictly a business relationship, and that's sort of heretical in science circles, but less so than it used to be. So, and I think Camilla Fox might be here tonight of Project Coyote, and I would love to hear what she has to say about this. So now let's move on to Manzanita. There are a whopping 116 Manzanita species in California, more than any other native plant, and they're absolutely fascinating plants. But I'm not going to say much about them tonight because You can find an entire YouTube presentation about them that I did called The Amazing Manzanita. I did it for Santa Clara Valley CNPS, complete with rhyming memory aids. And you can find it on my website or go to Santa Clara Valley, or you can just Google it on YouTube with my name. It's had about 2,400 views. So Manzanita is fascinating for its thin skin that peels around summer solstice, the way it's pollinated in middle C, and its ability to photosynthesize sugars in its stem and branches. It's very important for hummingbirds and 23 other bird species, such as this beautiful mountain quail that I put in here that I figured most of you have never seen. This quail eats its berries, as do California quails and a lot of other birds, and a whole host of mammals, including chipmunks and ground squirrels. And see these stuffed cheek pouches? They're full of manzanita berries. And black-tailed deer and black bears and gray foxes. And here I want to put in 2 plugs, one for Kim Cabrera, who's a fantastic tracker and teacher. I consult her and her website frequently. And for Bay Nature magazine, which did a page turner of a story in the January issue about naturalist Bill Lycum and gray foxes that he got to know in the Palo Alto Baylands. Over many years, Lycum got to know the foxes as individuals by going out at every dawn and dusk for years. And he actually captured a photograph of a female fox who he had met soon after she was born. He named her Bold, and her father was the patriarch of the Baylands, the alpha male, or the big honcho. And he got a photo of the moment when she challenged her father for his territory and won. That is a game-changing event in human understanding of foxes and probably canines in general. So if you love nature and live in the Bay Area, or if you live in Ukiah, or if you live even anywhere in California's Oak Woodlands, you might want to subscribe to Bay Nature magazine. And now I'm going to dive into poison oak, and I hope I don't get a rash. At least 53 bird species eat poison oak berries, more than eat any other berries of any other plants, as far as I can tell. And one of those is the wren tit in this wonderful watercolor that's in the book. And on the upper right is a downy woodpecker, and the lower right is a northern flicker in these wonderful photos by John Davis. And birds not only eat poison oak berries and seeds and forage in poison oak for insects, they also nest and roost in poison oak. Now this is my boyfriend, leafless now in winter. This is the male poison oak bush I fell in love with over the 5 years that I was writing my book, which I did outdoors whenever I could. This is the boyfriend whose hand I will never get to hold. Some of you will remember him from my poison oak chapter. And here we have 3 birds finding safety in his arms: a spotted towhee, the bright red, black, and orange bird, a golden crowned sparrow above the towhee, and that blue in the lower right is a scrub jay. And here's a closer look at the golden crowned sparrow, who will be flying north, maybe to Alaska in a couple of months. And then if she survives, she'll come back here next fall and come right to this same poison oak bush and hang out in the same bush with the same golden crowned sparrows with whom she has no blood relationships. So pretty soon, poison oak will be covered with tiny white clove-scented flowers that will attract a multitude of insects, like this honeybee on the left, as well as various native bees, butterflies, and beetles. Do you know what this is here, this metallic green insect? That is a native bee, and you can see the pollen baskets on their legs. So most people stay so far away from poison oak that they never notice these exquisite little flowers or its berries. But I urge you to edge as close as you can without actually touching it. And if you have close focusing binoculars, you can safely get exquisite views of the flowers, insects, berries, and these seeds that are technically called drupes. And most of them still have their tan husks on, but the white and black parts have the husks have fallen off. And imagine that most people have never even noticed these berries, or seeds, even though they're probably the most important plant food for birds in California. I don't know. I think even possibly more than acorns. At least more birds can eat poison oak berries because they're smaller and they don't need to be cracked open. And a lot of mammals eat them too. And in the back of my poison oak chapter, you can find a list of everybody who eats them and a whole lot of other things. And here's what those legendary close focus binoculars look like. They're very lightweight. And if I could buy one gift to help someone fall in love with the Oak Woodlands and nature in general, it would be these. And I almost never go outside without them. And you can read about them or buy them on my website. They help support my Oak Woodland protection and education work. So another shrub that you might want to approach with close focus binoculars when it's in bloom is coyote bush. But wait a minute, is this coyote bush in bloom? Well, you might think the answer to that is obvious, but actually it's not. The beautiful snow-like fluff we're seeing here is actually consists of hair-like strands attached to seeds. And you can see the seeds here in the lower right. And the unit, the strands and the seeds each one is called a pappus. And they enable the seeds to fly away to start new coyote bushes away from the mother plant. And those seeds are eaten by birds like bush tits and Buick wrens and lesser goldfinches. That's the bird in the upper right. And well, when does coyote bush bloom if those weren't blooms? And what does it look like when it does? So see if you can remember a time of year when you have smelled the sweet scent of coyote bush flowers, and what did the landscape around you look like at that time? Where I live, it starts blooming in mid to late September, and here's what the flowers look like. On the left, we have and plants are either male or female. So on the left, we have the female flowers on a female plant before they've gone to seed, and on the right are the male flowers. And one way of remembering them is that the flowers on the male plants, have crew cuts, and the flowers on the female plants have ponytails, or sort of. They actually look much more like ponytails after they have gone to seed, the ones on the left. So think about the fact that these flowers bloom in fall when almost everything else has already fruited and gone to seed. There might be some vinegar weed and tarweed still blooming, but not much else. And that means that these flowers are a rare source of nectar for insects. And if you approach coyote plants when they're coyote bush plants when their smell is permeating the air in the middle of the day, you'll find bees and wasps and ants and butterflies and crane flies and true flies. And here's another one of those native flies, the bristly science fiction-y taconid fly. This is another great one for close focus binoculars. So is this lovely beast on a female coyote bush or a male coyote bush? Well, these are the female flowers because they're the elongated ones that look sort of like ponytails. So coyote bush is a great shrub to plant if you want to help restore insect populations. More than 200 insects seek it out for its nectar and or pollen, and around 20 moth and butterfly species use it as a host plant. It also hosts 2 insect species that cause the plant to create these structures, which are called galls on the left, that become nurseries for the larvae and pupae of, in this case, a midge, the coyote bush budgall midge, which is a kind of a tiny fly. And it grew up inside this structure. She grew up inside this structure, which her mother had caused the coyote bush to create for her, complete with food for her. And I explain the phenomenon of galls in my oak gall chapter. So all in all, at least 290 insect species depend on coyote bush. It stabilizes soil, it provides protection from browsing deer for oak seedlings, other kinds of seedlings, it retards fire, and it provides shelter for numerous birds, especially white-crowned sparrows and wren tits, and lots of mammals, including coyotes. That may be where it got its name. And it grows fast. You can keep it from looking leggy and ratty with pruning. Okay, so what's another oak woodland shrub? This one is often on oak woodland edges and openings, Ceanothus, also known as California lilac. There are 76 species of Ceanothus native to California, and this is Ceanothus cuneatus, also known as buckbrush or wedgeleaf Ceanothus. It hosts 95 caterpillar species, 9 butterflies, and 86 moths, including, of course, the Ceanothus silk moth that we already saw. And another is the echo blue butterfly that we also already met. And here is its caterpillar, and it's green, not pink. It's not on a flower, and it's trying to hide in a Ceanothus leaf by using silk to roll the leaf around itself as much as it can, which is a good place to hide when you're green, if it were in a flower. So it might crawl away from the flowers to leaves when it's not feeding. And that's rolling up leaves is a trick used by a lot of caterpillars. They use the silk to somehow help it happen. But what is this ant doing here? Well, the caterpillars of this family, this butterfly family, the Lycaenidae, have a symbiotic relationship with ants. The ants drink a sweet substance called honeydew that is produced by this caterpillar's 7th abdominal segment right in here somewhere. And that's what this ant appears to be doing. And in return for honeydew, and honeydew extends the life of an ant from 1 day to 14 days. So it's very precious to them. And in return for being able to drink honeydew, the ants guard the caterpillars. And the caterpillars, sometimes, you know, the ants aren't on the job. And when that happens and the caterpillars feel threatened, they have evolved the ability to make a sound that mimics the sound of ant larvae when they feel threatened. And that brings the ants running. And it's thought that ants might even take echo blue caterpillars, the last instar, into their chrysalises, into their nests to pupate and stay there until they turn into butterflies. It's not known for sure. And this whole family is really fascinating. And when I go walking in the spring, one of my favorite things to do is to put my nose close to a buckbrush flower cluster and inhale the wonderful smell. And lots of insects are also drawn to that same scent. And here on the right, you can see a larger version of a hoverfly. Not a great photograph, but still bigger. And flies have only 2 wings, not the 4 that bees have. And these hoverflies have evolved to mimic bees, but they don't have stingers. Okay, moving right along, another important Bay Area shrub is mountain mahogany. This is also a sweet-scented plant. It's in the rose family, and it's not related to the wood mahogany. But I'm not going to have time, I think, to talk about it much. But look on the lower left, look at those seeds. They're called tailed seeds. That's what Cercocarpus, the species name of, or the genus name of this plant means, tailed seeds. And those seeds have fluff on them so that they can blow away and land somewhere. And when they do that, not much happens for a while. And then when it rains and they get wet, their coils, they uncoil, and in uncoiling, the seed gets drilled into the ground. And the other thing I just want to point out is if you look at this leaf up here, this is a pretty unassuming plant and it's easy to miss it. But if you look closely, the seed, did I say, this leaf has, it's smooth halfway up and then it has teeth. And that's the signature of the mountain mahogany leaf. So this plant, mountain mahogany, fixes nitrogen, basically fertilizing itself, and it stabilizes soil. And let's see, I'm going to move on to coffeeberry. This is a shrub that is named coffeeberry because its seeds look like coffee beans. I think that's it. So coffeeberry blooms in May, and it attracts a lot of insects. And if you want to have some incredible insect sightings, make friends with a coffeeberry bush. These are just a few of dozens of insects Mark Kummel has photographed on coffeeberry. Well, the one in the bottom row center is a jumping spider. And on the upper right, that is a row of katydid eggs. And I'm not going to take the time to name all these now. Maybe we'll have time to do it during the Q&A or something. And these are an instar of the pale swallowtail caterpillar on coffeeberry. And these are false eyes intended to draw predators to the rear end of the plant instead of the head end, which is over here of the plant, of the caterpillar. I only got 4 hours of sleep last night. In the silk on this leaf, it turns out that the caterpillar spins that to create a mat that it can cling to so it doesn't fall off. And I imagine that happens as it gets older and heavier. And here is the butterfly that comes out. The berries of coffeeberry often show up in 4 colors at the same time. And these are some of the only juicy fruits available for birds in the fall. And they're also eaten by wood rats, deer, bear, and other mammals. And this is an excellent native shrub to plant under an oak tree because it tolerates part shade. Plus it's fire retardant. And now back to oaks. This is coast live oak, a gorgeous coast oak gorgeous oak that's endemic to California, and that has been tragically ravaged by sudden oak death. Here's another coast live oak beauty. And mature trees often have really beautiful, sinuous and twisting limbs, but this one takes the cake. This is the most widespread oak in the Bay Area. The oak that occurs naturally over the most amount of land in the Bay Area. So the yellow color here means that the tree grows naturally here if it's not competing with asphalt and concrete, etc. And notice how it goes right up to the edge of the water all around the bay. And contrast that with this map of interior live oak. Oops, wrong. I'm managing two computers here, advancing slides on two computers. So this is the interior live oak natural range, and it doesn't come up to the water on the east bay side. And none of the other oaks that are native to the Bay Area cover as much ground or native ground as these two species do. And I took these maps from calscape.org, which is an incredibly useful website hosted by the California Native Plant Society. You can find a map like this for any plant native to California, along with information like this. A description of the plant, size and color of flowers and fragrance or not, form, flowering season, growth rate, dormancy. And on the bottom, landscaping information, what it needs. And look at this, even nurseries. And this is a live link. You can click on this and find the closest nursery to you. You could even search for that by zip code, I think, that carry it. But where I always go is to this middle section called Wildlife Supported. And they have a boilerplate couple of sentences here about oaks. But they also have this part about what butterflies and moths are hosted by this plant. And it says here that 122 caterpillars use coast live oak as a host plant. And so then you can say show all, and you will see thumbnail photographs of all 122. And then if you click on one of those is called the golden hair streak. And if you click on that thumbnail, you'll see a range map for where golden hair streaks occur in California. Another thing you can do on this site is put in your zip code to find plants native to it if you're trying to figure out what kind of native plants to plant. And you can do advanced searches with about 20 filters, depending on what your needs are. If you need a hedge plant, some kind of a screen plant, or if you're looking for fragrance, or if you can search by moths and butterflies. So, and this butterfly, by the way, lays her eggs only on oaks and possibly only on live oaks. I mean, only on oaks and chinkapins, and of the oaks, possibly only on live oaks. So if you don't know how to identify oaks, I have created an laminated two-sided oak identification guide that either shows or refers to all of the tree oaks and one of the scrub oaks found in the Bay Area. And you can see along here, along the bottom, that this guide also shows galls that can help you identify an oak. Some of these occur on only one species of oak, and some occur on only two species of oak. And sometimes when you're totally stumped because of how much oaks hybridize with each other, the galls will solve the mystery. And on the other side, on this side, if you look up here, it says in the upper right, it says white oaks. And if you turn it over, the red and golden oaks. And you can learn more about what that means, either on this guide, or you can see a video that I made called Who's Who Among the Oaks that talks about how to identify oaks. And that video is full of fun rhymes and vivid images to help you learn your oaks. And for that, you can't go directly to YouTube. You have to go to my website and find it there because it's hosted by CNPS. So why? So let's get back to that question. Why do oaks support more life forms than any other tree in North America? Well, according to Doug Tallamy, the genus Quercus is more widespread than any other tree genus in North America, and I think even in the Northern Hemisphere. And the trees in this genus and their tan oak cousins are marvels of evolutionary genius that allows them to grow to be very large and live very long lives. We have one here in Mendocino County, a valley oak that's 800 years old. And we also have the tallest valley oak in the world here in Mendocino County. And that means that over millennia, insects, the foundation of animal food webs, have had more chances to encounter and therefore to evolve with and adapt to oaks than to any other type of plant. It means an enormous number of insect species can eat the leaves, nuts, flowers, cambium, sap, galls, and roots of oaks and not die of chemical poisoning. It means that gall wasps, for instance, have had time, evolutionary time, to figure out how to bend oaks to do their bidding and create nursery for their larvae and pupae, complete with food-lined walls. And it explains why in 87 US counties, oaks support more caterpillars than any other plant. And furthermore, each mature oak can produce plus or minus 3 million nutrient-rich acorns in its lifetime and 700,000 leaves every year. And those leaves, of course, become food for countless insects and other organisms. But acorns and leaves aren't the whole story. What goes on below the tree? The leaves that drop off oaks create the best leaf litter known to soil organisms. And I don't have time to explain how that is, but the result is that oak leaf litter provides cover, hiding places, and usually moisture for myriad organisms all year. I say usually moisture, but it does. I mean, at least it's wetter under there than it is above. And most of those organisms are tiny, like springtails and mites, and you can find 1 million nematodes in a 1 square meter of oak leaf litter. But there are also larger organisms that are so well camouflaged, and or not very big, and we just don't notice them. There are 3 in this picture, and I'm sure you can find the newt. And by now you've probably found the wolf spider right here. Has anyone found the leaf litter moth? It's right here. And this, if you can believe it, this is a caterpillar. This is a caterpillar that's going to turn into a moth that feeds on nothing but dead oak leaves. And apparently there are quite a few of those. So the message here is leave your leaves. Have a messy yard. And another thing that it does is that rich leaf litter is also a great place for planting acorns, which is what this scrub jay is doing. This jay's earliest ancestor started co-evolving with oaks about 60 million years in Southeast Asia when oaks were just starting out in the world. And the hook on this jay's bill evolved precisely for ripping the husks off of acorns. And this jay also evolved to have an expandable esophagus that allows her to carry 5 acorns at a time to be buried and stored for later consumption, but a lot of them never get consumed and many of them end up germinating. And almost all the native oaks in the Bay Area have been planted by this one species. But we need to help them out now, because oaks are under incredible pressure. And I don't know if you're all familiar with the California Oaks Foundation, California Wildlife Foundation, and I want to put a plug in for them. They have been working hard for years to conserve and protect oaks. And what I urge you to do is plant at least one oak tree a year, and preferably more. And plant at least one native plant, and one other plant that's native to your area per year, preferably more. And before I end with a little wood rat photo vignette, I want to encourage you to go to the contact page of my website to be put on my email list for a very occasional email from me about my walks and talks and sometimes my sightings. And please include the county where you live, because my list is organized by region so that I don't have, if I'm giving a talk in San Jose, I don't have to bug somebody in Arcata with an email about it. And please also buy my book directly from me if you're going to buy it, because that way I will make more than 70 cents a book. So this is just a little glimpse into the early morning life of a wood rat, who is actually not a rat. She is actually a giant mouse. And here she is carrying a sprig of live oak leaves into her home in the Santa Cruz Mountains at around 4 in the morning. And she's feeling pretty good. Her food situation is secure. She already has 9 pounds of acorns stashed in her acorn pantry. And her berry pantry is stocked with coffee berry and manzanita and madrone and poison oak berries. She has plenty of her favorite food, live oak leaves, in her leaf larder. And her leaching room is filled with Toyon and coffee berry leaves that are outgassing until she can safely eat them. She thinks she'll sleep pretty well this morning because she won't be hungry. She's nocturnal, obviously. Sleeps during the day because she won't be hungry, and her well-built house in the middle of this poison oak thicket protects her pretty well from the skunks and bobcats and foxes and badgers and coyotes and bears and mountain lions and hawks and owls and rattlesnakes, all of whom would love to merge her nutrients with theirs. But she's not ready to turn in for the day yet because she still has a few housekeeping chores. She's a fabulous housekeeper, and she needs to take out the compost and do something about the fleas. Remember her nest that didn't have any bay leaves in it? So here she is removing a dead leaf from her oak leaf pantry and heading off into the canopy for her last foraging expedition of the night to collect some bay leaves. So I want to thank my friend John Klein for these wood rat photos and encourage you to go to his website to see his absolutely stunning photography. And thanks again to all the other photographers whose photos I've used. Please contact me and I will add your name to my email list, to your photo. Whoa, I'll add your name to the photo in my slideshows. And I guess now it's time for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Kate. Great job.
Bunch of stumbles, but
oh no,
well.
Yeah, you're great. While people are putting their questions into chat, I see a lot of thank yous already. I am just reflecting on how much I don't know and how much I miss when I'm walking around in the Oak Woodlands. And man, I could only imagine how much somebody would learn by just walking with you for an hour or two out there. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just
Yeah.
wish I could have been able to interact with my audience, but oh well, that's coming, I hope.
Yeah. Um, let's see. So the site that you were sharing around plant info, I believe, was calscape.org,
Yeah,
right?
calscape.org. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I put that in chat. Let me just mention that in chat again, so you all have that, and that's a great resource. It's
Do you use it, Mark? Do you
I
use it?
do. Yeah, I was about to say, you it's old news to a lot of you in the audience, but anybody who's getting more into native plants and learning, the iNaturalist app is great. My personal favorite is the Seek
Mhm.
app.
Mhm.
That's very great for taking photos. Sometimes you could get a match quickly, and then there's a record of all of your observations. And what I do really is like look at my observations and then go to Calscape,
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
go deeper on those plants that I learned about. You know,
I've
um,
noticed that Calscape isn't keeping up. I mean,
hmm,
CNPS isn't keeping up. I found quite a few errors. Like if you go to if you look on the page for all the oaks in California, there are a ton of species in there that aren't oaks. And so there error, and I bet they might be able to use some volunteers if anybody
hmm,
has some extra time.
yeah. I know a lot of us love CNPS. Go to
Yeah.
the website and see how you can get involved and help, or with their local chapters too.
Well, it's
Uh,
great to hear that you think that so many of our audience already knows this site, Calscape. I know of some people who came tonight who are pretty
yeah,
new to all of this stuff. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hope I wasn't talking down too much to
Oh
the
no,
rest of the audience.
no, you did great. A couple of great questions here that I think is going to help a lot of people, um, or just be interesting to a lot of people. Well, somebody asked, do you have any favorite parks in the Sonoma area with Oak Woodlands? But let's just expand that to just, can you name a few places that are your favorite Oak Woodland areas?
Well, Shiloh Regional Park is really great.
Mhm.
And the Laguna de Santa Rosa is a valley oak. Uh, it's a it's a lagoon in the winter, and valley oaks live there. And um, but access is well. People who live in Sonoma County, since I don't live there, I don't know exactly the
Yeah.
best places to access it.
Mhm.
Um, I actually haven't done a whole lot of hiking. Annandale State Park is another one. I think it also has coniferous trees, firs, but it does have a lot of oak woodlands, and some great studies have been done there of oak woodland species like the California newt. Um, so let's see. I would like to ask other members of the audience to put
Yeah.
suggestions in the chat.
Oh yeah, let's do that. If you have any favorite Oak Woodland areas, please shout them out in chat, and I'll add a couple of mine here in the peninsula in the South Bay. Starting with the South Bay, if you're in San Jose, I really recommend you go out to places like Calero County Park or Grant
Mm,
Ranch. Um, if you have a full day, get out to Henrico State Park. It's an incredible spot.
yeah.
I would include on the peninsula, um, you know, Oak Woodland areas include Arastradero, Windy Hill, um, areas like that. Yeah. So East Bay, areas around Del Val, you know,
Hmm.
you'll run into a lot of oak woodland areas, and it's nice to note, you know, there's a gradient or a spectrum moving from oak woodlands that are like these dense areas to more oak savanna type um, areas. So yeah, and great suggestions coming
Oh
through.
yeah, and I see Mount Burdell in Novato. I was trying to think of that. Um,
Hmm.
and Sonoma Valley Regional Park. I don't even know where that is.
Hmm. Oh yeah, Rancho Cañada del Oro and Coyote Valley are great as well. So many great suggestions to go out and enjoy these places.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and so I urge everybody to save the chat at the end. So
yeah, yeah,
you
that will be
or
available. Um, Before we end, Kate, I want to just reiterate or remind people or ask you one more time, you know, what are a few ways for people to support or help the Oak Woodlands? You know, you've already mentioned um, planting native plants, you know,
yeah,
so that's very important. Um, but before we started the program, you're just talking about the importance of being an involved citizen and advocacy. So,
yeah.
you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, pay attention to what's going on in your local city council or your board of supervisors, or even at the state level. Oak woodlands are disappearing fast, and because oaks like to live in the same places that humans like to live. So, and they are one of California's greatest old growth resources as far as carbon sequestration. And so we need to protect, as far as I'm concerned, every single mature oak tree. They shouldn't get cut down for anything. They
Hmm.
not only sequester a lot of carbon, but as you just heard, they support so much life.
Hmm.
And so go to bat for them, go speak up at city council meetings, send in comments, mobilize people to do the same. I did that for 7 months last year in Mendocino County, in relation to an ordinance that our supervisors were planning to adopt. And in spite of an unprecedented number of comments, they went ahead and adopted it anyway. So then I and some other people mounted a referendum campaign, and we got the ordinance rescinded.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
this is a tool that I think people should know about, because the pressure on wildlands is so incredible right now as the population of the state increases.
Hmm.
So let's see. And then just get outside and take other people outside with you and turn them on to what is so wonderful about Oak Woodlands.
Hmm.
And that was my idea when I wrote my book. I was hoping, I didn't really want I don't didn't definitely did not want to be a political animal. And so I wrote the book with the hope that other people would take up the cause and protect Oak Woodlands. And I think a lot of people are doing that, but not enough. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are doing it in response to my book, but I've turned out to have to do it myself too. and
Yeah.
and it was actually, well, it was a long, arduous slog. I was the communications hub of the campaign because I have a big email list.
Hmm.
So I was the one that was I was the hub, and it was a really long, arduous effort, but wonderful because of the way the group I was working with, the way we all worked together.
And the outcome, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
the outcome,
yeah.
yeah. How
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, and that's what we want folks to remember that and hear about, that is that all these places that we have here in the Bay Area didn't become protected and become areas that you could go out and visit on accident, there's decades and decades of this type of work, both advocacy and also, like I said earlier, our wonderful donors who are enabling projects to occur. So, the first step is to appreciate these places, and to the extent that you can, think about, your role as a citizen to help care for them. So that's such a great place to end. However, I'm just going to backtrack to one specific question because it came from a 6-year-old. And it was a young person named Oliver asking about, Kate, can you just name a few of the snakes that live in Oak Woodlands other than rattlesnakes, for Oliver real quick before we conclude?
Rattlesnakes, gopher snakes, garter snakes. Let's see, what's the one? There's a racer. Let's see. I should know more snakes. I'm on the spot.
Snakes.
There's a ringneck snake.
Okay. There you go.
I saw that someone wanted to know the name of the butterfly that the aunt was milking, and it's the echo blue butterfly.
Okay, very good.
Pink snakes. Oh yeah.
Snakes. There you go.
And the
there you go, Oliver. There's some snakes for you. All right. Well, let me just remind everybody, Kate, about your website one more time. I want to say thank you again for all of your time, and for sharing all of your knowledge. Everybody loved this presentation. There's so many thank yous in chat, and I hope.
How many people came?
A good few hundred there. So I want to just tell folks to go to your website, sign up for the newsletter, and maybe buy the book and check out some of Kate's walks. Thank you again, Kate, and have a good rest of your evening.
Okay. Thank you, and goodbye, everybody. See you on the trail.
All right. See you, everybody.